Hello, everybody. Welcome to Journey into Ayurveda episode 3. Today we will do Dinacharya part 2. Last episode, we talked about our morning routines as a part of morning Dinacharyas, but there are more to our day than just what we do in the morning. So, in today's episode, we will talk about the concept of Dinacharya, time, rhythms of the day, and when is the best time to eat during this day. But first, let's do a little internalization. Kate, do you want to start us with internalization?
Yeah. So we'll do a little chant and then I'll do like a translation of it and then we'll go from there. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. All right, great. So find a nice comfortable seat with your ears, shoulders, hips all stacked. You can rest your eyes closed if that feels okay, or maybe just gaze down towards your nose and take a breath in through your nose. Long, slow exhale. Loka samasta Sukhino bhavantu loka samasta. Sukhino bhavantu loka samasta. Sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, so may all beings everywhere be happy, be healthy, be free. May our thoughts, deeds, actions, and words contribute in some way to that happiness, and may there be peace, peace, perfect peace.
That's lovely. Thank you. So, yeah, today we will talk about concept of Svasthavrtta, and Dinacharya is related to that. How would you explain Dinacharya in this context?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. So Dinacharya is part of this big concept in Ayurveda called Svasthavrtta, which you pronounce far better than I do. And that's really translated into the science of prevention. And I think that's a really unique thing about Ayurveda. So it's the intention of having preventing any number of things rather than like searching for a cure after something has already happened or after the body or the mind has been diseased. So swastika means a healthy person, and there's a sloka or a verse from one of our foundational texts, of which we've talked about already in our previous episodes, and we'll probably continue to talk about because it's so important. That really talks about sama dosha, sama agni, sama dhatu, mala kriya, and really, having balance in our constitutions, our doshas, having balance in our agni or our digestion. Having balance in our tissues, in our bowel movements, all of the things that we don't need in our bodies, and then having all of this in a clear, neutral state of mind as well, and that we have kind of sharp senses coming in. So we have the right intake of all of the things, and then we find balance throughout. So really, that's the definition of health in Ayurveda. And we do that so much with the practice of Dinacharya, which comes under that practice of Svasthavrtta, that literally the science of prevention.
Yeah, thanks for defining that. Knowing what Svasthavrtta is, let's talk a little bit more about our goal of it. The goal to preserve and maintain the health and prevent diseases. And there are 3 types of Svasthavrtta: Dinacharya, Ratricharya, Ritucharya. We will talk about Dinacharya today.
Yeah, let's talk about doshas because I think that's a big concept in Ayurveda, and it's something that doesn't really have a good translation into English. So I think it's a pretty unique term, and I'd love if you want to take us through that, Ashwini, and tell us a little bit more about those for context.
Yeah, doshas are energetics of all things, seasons, life cycles, daily rhythm. They are that which go out of balance. Dushana swabhave the dosha. Doshas are which goes out of balance. And we as a people each have our own unique dosha makeup as well. There are 5 great elements, and that is Panchamahabhutas, and doshas are made up of Panchamahabhutas. Let's talk about Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. There are 3 doshas. The first one is Vata. Vata is energy of movement. It consists of air, ether, But if you want to think about anything in nature which has movement in it, that is vata. And pitta. Pitta is the energy of transformation. It consists of fire and water. So pitta, energy of transformation, anything which is transforming in nature is pitta. And kapha, energy of nourishment or stability, because it has earth and water element in it. So anything which is nurturing, grounding, stabilizing in nature, that's kapha.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's super helpful to think about it both in terms of like, there's so much more to it than just like physical attributes. But I think it's so interesting to look at like the structure of all of our bodies and to know like how different all of our bodies are. But within those differences, like you can tell a Vata person because in general they tend to be a lot smaller, slender. They have a harder time kind of gaining or losing weight. They're very small, tend to run a little bit dry, like brittle hair, things like that. Pitta people tend to run warm, so you can like touch their hands and they're like always warm. So they're like very heated, and that's that fire element that they have in them. The other thing with Vata is that they're always like constantly moving. So you see, I like talk with my hands all the time. Like I have a lot of Vata. And then Kapha people tend to be a little bit bigger. I don't want to say like obese or anything like that. Like that's not it, but they tend to have larger bones. They're a little bit bigger. They're slower moving, and kind of like Vata, they're colder too. So maybe not necessarily like cold to the touch like Vata people, but you can see these elements like at play in each of us, which I think is super interesting.
Yeah, since everything in the cosmos can be discussed in the framework of three doshas, we can use this concept to figure out what are the best activities to do within our each time of the day. How do you do this?
Yeah. So, I think when we talk about the different times and the different cycles, I think for me it's that I really want to optimize the naturally occurring rhythms of the day. So I want to get up and moving, ideally before kapha time, but that doesn't happen super often because kapha time starts at 6 a.m. So I'm usually like moving in the bed by about 6, but that doesn't mean I'm necessarily like out of bed. But ideally, like we want to use that time because kapha time is a little bit more like sluggish and slower moving. So we want to counter that with a little bit of movement with that vata. And so I want to support the movement of my body there and then really eating, the heavier meal around lunchtime and that pitta time. So 10 to 2 is that pitta time, but then, more specifically eating lunch, that biggest meal of your day, according to Ayurveda, between like 11 and 1. And then the Vata time in the afternoon, really trying to like limit the movement that you do there to an extent. Like I think we talked in previous episodes that's like when I was training for half marathons, like right after work at like 4 or 5, that's when I'm out like trying to throw miles down. And that was really aggravating to my Vata. So either doing some more like creative work or doing like a yoga nidra if you've got a constitution like me. If you're kapha, you don't want to be doing the yoga nidra. We'll talk more about that. But really just trying to optimize that. And then having dinner time, again in that kapha time from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. It's also that time that you want to be connecting with your loved ones or your pets or whoever that is, and having a lighter meal so you're not taxing the body when it's not prime time for digestion. That's a really quick overview, but like what are some of the things that you do, Ashwini, with that?
I totally agree how you put that. Generally, I do follow kapha, pitta, vata cycle to plan my day and activities to minimize the chances of the dosha imbalance and getting aggravated. So for my
Yeah, for sure.
breakfast as well, my my breakfast kind of depends, but like what I usually do is I eat by 8 o'clock in the morning. That's the mistake I was doing. I was not eating by 8 o'clock, and my vata was getting aggravated in the morning. I had nightmares, and everything was off in my life. When I started eating 8 o'clock in the morning and 1 o'clock in the afternoon and 7 o'clock for dinner, that's when my whole mind as well as body got stabilized. I totally agree how you put it, and I am doing the same as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, between those times that we eat, having that time to like break from food, like having a little mini fast is really helpful. You give your digestion that break. So that's great. And you just talked about like a little bit about your eating times, but will you share more about what you eat like throughout the day?
Yeah, definitely. My breakfast kind of depends on the mood of that day. Sometimes if I want something light, I just soak previous night some almonds, dates, and black grapes, and then just blend that up with some spices and drink it. But if I want some like light porridge kind of thing, I make a rice porridge or millet. Today was millet porridge. So, and I mix that with some spices and eat it. Poha is an Indian breakfast that I eat sometimes. Millets are like often I eat millets in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And for lunch and dinner, usually 11:30 I cook, and 12 o'clock I eat my lunch. It's usually South Indian recipes, chapathis, Talipettu. That's also South Indian, and it's from the region from where I am. I eat by 12 o'clock and dinner by 6. I usually eat the same thing. I eat for lunch and dinner. I cannot cook two meals. Usually, it's nice if you can cook lighter soup for dinner. But yeah, sometimes I do that.
Yeah, awesome. So you have that like spaced out time like we just talked about. That's awesome. And then can you share a little bit more about what chaputi and tailputa is? And maybe you mentioned another one, poha. Will you talk a little bit more about those?
Yeah, a poha is a flattened rice. It's light for breakfast in the morning. You just put that in some spices and eat it. It's easier to make. That's why I like it for breakfast. In the West, it's become Indian foods are becoming more popular, but home cooked meal is actually quite different than what is available at the restaurant. Home cooked recipes are totally more in line with Ayurvedic principle, not always, but more. Chapati is a dough made from whole wheat flour, rolled flat and roasted on iron skillet, kind of like tortillas, which we eat, but with whole wheat flour. Ayurveda talks about heavy grains in the afternoon. This is one of the good options because it's sweet aftertaste and makes you feel full for sufficient amount of time. And Talipettu, it's another fun way to adding millets in your diet. There is a lot of amazing millets we use which are good. For this one, you this is one is a dough made using millets, vegetables, etc., flattened with hand and roasted on iron skillet again with little oil. One of the Ayurvedic concepts we learned in that everything in the universe has natural cycles. For example, humans have natural daily cycle, kind of like a circadian rhythm, and we want to train ourselves with the natural cycle. We need to consistently do activities at the same time every day. This has to be within the muhurta, which is 45 minutes window. I use this principle trying to eat 45 minutes window every day. How about you, Kate? What food patterns do you like?
Yeah. So kind of, I mean, I don't have nearly as creative recipes as you do. I'm still working on that. But I think my food pattern is pretty much like you said, like, what do I have going on for the day? I'm still kind of traveling and like up and around quite a bit. So I try to be really intentional. If it's a big travel day, I'm going to have a heartier breakfast to, sustain me. Cause sometimes I can't hit the muhurta, that 45-minute window. So sometimes my lunch varies, and that's like the vada in me too. That's like, it's okay to push that a little bit. But I think, for me, I try to have, something a little heartier if I know I'm going to be up and moving around or like traveling for the day. So something heartier for me is like scrambled eggs with some cheese potentially. And then my other go-to that I prefer a lot is oatmeal, like cooked oatmeal. Depending on the season, like some ghee, or I make it a little bit runnier with more water. And then I almost always will have dates or raisins or cranberries. And sometimes I'll add in like some cardamom, and I always like a little salt. That's also part of my dosha makeup. And then sometimes I'll do like if I have some leftover khichdi from the night before, which is just, basmati rice and some dal beans. I maybe will reheat that, not in the microwave. I'll just like heat it on my skillet as another option if I have that, or sometimes I do that with scrambled eggs. And then a lighter option. So especially I'm in Colorado for right now, and it's really warm here. And so, I don't need the heated element as much, or like the heaviness as much. So on those days, I'll maybe just like cut up some fruits, some apples, pears, and bananas, and I still cook them a little bit more because that helps, my body digest a little bit better. Um, so that's usually what I do for breakfast. And then like you, I'll, if I'm somewhere that there's a kitchen, I'll make a heartier lunch. And sometimes that means that I eat fish, I eat salmon, and I do eat chicken still time to time. So that's, if I'm going to have meat, that's where I'm going to try to eat the meat. And I'll make that with like some cooked veggies and some rice, or sometimes I'll do some like rice noodles. It's more kind of like an Asian lineage. And then for dinner, I do kind of like you, like if I'm able to make another meal, I will, but usually I'll just like reheat or eat what I made for lunch. And then that same kind of spacing out like you have, I try to eat breakfast before 8 a.m., have lunch somewhere around like 11:30 to 1 is usually like my gap. So it's a little bit over that Muhurta hour. And then dinner, again, that kind of varies too, but usually around like 6:30 is when I'm hungry and ready for dinner. So honoring that rhythm in the Muhurta has been really helpful for me. So Ashwini, this is, really quick overview of like a really big topic, but what we've learned so far in school and what we've, some of the different changes that we've made, what's been the best shift for you in this regard?
Yeah, the best shift is eating at the right time. As I said before, sticking to the pattern changed my life completely. I wake up fresh. As I said, I don't get nightmares, which is very important. I get dreams, but not nightmares. And I have energy throughout the day. Morning is kappa time of the day, so I eat small breakfast, so it will give me more energy, and I have more heavier lunch, so that will give me energy throughout the day. I don't crave for any sweets or anything in the middle for snack anymore. That's also making me feel like more energetic anymore, because the more you eat snacks, the more energy it takes out of you sometimes, which I don't like. That's why I eat a big lunch, which will keep me energized throughout the day. Like if I feel hungry in the middle, I always eat fruits. Fruits is an amazing snack to have in the middle of the day as well. That's what I do. And light dinner, I always like light dinners. I am a kappa type, so I don't really crave for heavy dinners or anything. So there are a lot of things which have changed in my life just by sticking to this meal pattern. How about you? What's the most effective shift you have made using this knowledge?
Yeah. I think for me, something that I've learned about myself years ago, I think before even Ayurveda, was like, I have to get in bed before 10 p.m. Like if I don't, and then I get into that pitta time so pitta is that energy of transformation, and it's digesting. So in the middle of the day, that 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., it's digesting literally like the food that we've consumed. And then at night, so 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., it's digesting like all of the other like sense organ information that we took in. And so when I wasn't consistent at my bedtime and like trying to go to bed when pitta is trying to process, like it just like throws my whole routine. And I'm vata pitta, but like a lot of vata imbalance still. And so like I need that sleep, that like tamasic heavier energy to like ground me for the next day. So I think the eating stuff is, and eating consistent meals the 3 times a day at the time is certainly helpful, but like going to bed before 10 is like, I have to do that. And again, like there's that grace, like, I was traveling, I was with some friends, I was with my partner. And so we were like up a little bit later because we, the 3 of us aren't ever together. So it was important to have that connection. So having that grace, like you talked about in our first episode, but then knowing like that consistency piece will come back to me. I have that rhythm established, but I think going to bed at 10 p.m., and then getting up and like out of bed before 8. And, realistically, I'm usually up and moving before 6. So that's helpful. And then eating before 8. Cause otherwise, like you, like I wouldn't necessarily have nightmares, but I can always tell when I am like heavy sleeping in kappa time, because my dreams are like so vivid and they will like stick with me all day. But it's because I was like in kappa time sleeping, and we should be like, doing something different in kappa time. So I think that's been a really big game shifter or game changer for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like after 10:30, 11, you get this huge amount of energy to do a lot of things, as well as like I have seen it myself. We both will start getting hungry again because it's the time of the day, and everything shift. If you, that's why 10:30 is like hard line we are keeping for bedtime, which is helping us a lot. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
thanks everyone for joining episode 3 of Dinacharya Part 2. As a reminder, our aim is to provide educational content and share a little bit of our journey in Ayurveda. Check out our Instagram page, and I will put the links in the bio. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.